Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Turning a Moment into a Movement. I am your host, J Love, and I also represent the Justice for Gerard movement. Gerard is my son who was wrongfully convicted for a crime he didn't do. Innocent, and he went to prison. Served 2 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections for that crime. And then he came home and he just recently passed away. However, because of that journey with Gerard and meeting so many other friends and whatever, my friends now and family, but I met so many other people on that journey who had a loved one that was wrongfully incarcerated. And so because of all of that, we decided to create this platform where we come on here on Fridays to talk about it, wrongful convictions, injustice, because the injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So that's why we're here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for those who watch us on YouTube. Thank you. And for those who watch us live on Twitter and Facebook, hello, thank you. And so we're going to get started because we have a lot to just uncover and unfold and talk about and just get some thoughts on it. So first of all, let me bring on Reverend Tia. Hi, Reverend Tia.
Well, hello, good evening, J Love. And you know what? I just thank God for the love that helps you to continue on. The genuine love and the love for people, the love for change, the love and the expectation that change will happen, that transformation will happen. I'm so glad to be here. I am on the platform of other social justice efforts, Michigan Coalition of Human Rights, Flint Women's Study, and along with the Bishop Bernadette Jefferson, definitely the Michigan Chair for G100, Oneness in Wisdom, which is an international organization empowering women, and I'm about empowering women. I am the founder of thechoicezone.com. And if you're looking for transformation for your own life, I'm your girl for that. And definitely
Reverend Tia
I
is having
thank I
some.
thank
Oh, there
God
you are.
for I think I froze for a second. I thank God for being a part of the community of transforming love community where love is definitely transforming lives. So as we are
Yeah.
here to educate and empower people towards change and collectively come together with ideas. I'm thanking God in advance that Gerard has helped us become a network of a huge think tank so that we can make change and so that we
Yes.
can come together. So thank you so much. And I'm excited about tonight's venue.
Yes, me too, Reverend Tia, because we've been talking about this police behaviors. We did, a series on it with attorney David Robinson and the whole George Floyd. We had conversations about that, and then here we are again today, having another
Yeah,
conversation. But you know what? We can make a choice for change. We can make a choice like today, like no more. All we have to do is choose. So thank you, Reverend
that's
Tia.
right. Hmm.
Greetings, Edward.
Hello, how are you guys doing? It's good to be here this evening.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Edward Sanders, and I go by the name of Baraka. I am a regular host or co-host or panelist, along with J Love and Reverend Tina and Tia, and there are some others that normally come on here, Attorney Mack and others. But in any case, I'm a regular here on the panel, and sometimes I get a bit busy and I'm not here. I think the last time I was here, I literally hit a meltdown. Um, J Love showed a video. I hadn't seen that video. I wasn't anticipating that video, and it literally shook me. I watched the woman being arrested. I seen a very, sorry, pitiful form of police so-called investigation. Um, um, and they literally took and emotionally and psychologically and spirit, they tore this woman apart, and she wound up being quite innocent, absolutely innocent. And it brings me to the reality. And I had to cut off the show, and I haven't been back on the show since then. I in fact reached out to the woman's attorney, and I not only met her attorney, but I met the attorney who that her attorney works for, the law firm he works in, and I come to find out that both of them are taking and representing people who have been, misused abused by the police, Detroit Police Department. And in one case, it was a video that I seen on television where the police had literally was taking target practice at a running young African American male, and they killed him. And so I'm calling to the law firm to connect with the attorney about one case, and come to find out that his partner has a case even more egregious than that, because the person in that case was actually killed. And since then, I actually been to the office. I went to the office and met the senior counsel, which is David Robinson, and I didn't realize he actually been on the show with us before.
Yeah.
And the unique thing about this particular officer is that, this particular attorney, is that he used to be
Police
a
officer.
police officer,
Mm-hmm.
both him and his partner. And
Oh,
in
okay.
fact, this gentleman was a police for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was a police for 10 years. And he subsequently became an attorney, and he specialized in taking and bringing cases against police is because of their due to their misconduct. And so it was refreshing to take and meet with him, have a discussion with him, and his partner was in the process of taking and actually filing a lawsuit. This is a good read too. So if you ever get a chance, take and read the officers. He acknowledged that we, meaning the public, we see police as heroes, but he tell you, you see a hero, but I see a human being.
Yes.
And he keeps it in perspective. There he is. There's the book. Absolutely. We had a very good, refreshing conversation, and I'm hoping to take and meet with him. I want to take and introduce Michigan exonerees. I want to take and maybe we all get together and take and have a brunch of sorts with each other. Me and him have talked about that, and I have spoken about that with some of Michigan exonerees, and so I'm hoping to take and try to get them together as a group, and maybe we all meet up somewhere with this attorney and his other partners in his law firm. He has his own law firm there in Springfield. I was like, I hope there's a place at this office I can park at. And I looked up and there's his name on the whole building. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can park where I want to park.
Yes, Attorney David Robinson is a pretty awesome person, and he has won a lot of lawsuits against Detroit police.
Yes. I was doing the homework on that. And we talked about some of the history and some of the practices. But some of the stuff can come out later during our conversation. But I'm happy to be here. But I'm also sad because this is a sad occasion. We have a police chief in a neighboring state that is planning to release a video, if it haven't already been released yet, of a police beating that they say that is worse than Rodney King. It have to be worse than Rodney King. The young man was killed. He was murdered, and the sad thing is that he was murdered by several African American police officers, and this is sad. But this goes to the idea. This is a culture, and sometimes we take for granted. We think that our color, our physical presence change things. Our physical presence doesn't change things. They take more than our physical presence. We have to go in with a conscientious mind, to take and reform. And we have a good example of this here in Detroit with the formal, he was a formal judge, Cochran. I'm trying to say his name. I'm getting his name mixed up with Cochran. But we had a formal judge right here in Detroit where a whole church, police went up in the church and arrested all the witnesses or who they thought were witnesses to a crime, but because they didn't participate in revealing or making any comments to the police, they arrest them all for the actual crime or related, and which is part of Detroit Police Department's history of taking and arresting witnesses to crimes. They arrest them sometimes for the actual crime, and this is particularly true in the case of homicides. And these convictions turn out to be, unreliable because of the type of evidence and how they gathered those evidence. We can't credit people with being heroes. First, we shouldn't be crediting anybody with heroes. This is a form of false worship. We have to let people be who they are. They are human beings. And that tells them and it tells us that we all subject to mistakes. But to leave some air in the room, there are other people that will be coming along, introducing themselves. So let me cut it out. I'm a much conversationist. Thank you.
All right. Speaking of conversationists, greetings.
Hello. My brother Sanders Barack, the man of the hour. My man. Good to see you, brother. Reverend T, I done told you about hiding from me. So I told you. And J Love, look here. Look, I cannot agree more with what Brother Sanders said. All of our programs are very serious, but this one even more so hurts my heart. You know, what I've seen this last week hurts my heart. You know, but allow me to introduce myself. Attorney Hugo J. Mack, criminal defense attorney, former candidate for Washtenaw County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I firmly believe the people best suited to solve the problem are people who have lived through the problem. Okay. So there we go for that. And for all future plugs for my political career, there we go on that. So now, here we go again. If you find yourself on Trouble Boulevard, push, pull, drag, tow that hoopty to Mack Street. Mack Street. Park in my virtual underground garage. When there, call the Freedom Line, 734-239-3118. The Freedom Line, 734-239-3118. The Freedom Line, 734-239-3118. And you're doggone right, I approve this advertisement. The other thing, when in times of trouble, hmaclaw.com is your hookup. hmaclaw.com is your hookup. hmaclaw.com is your hookup. And J Love, in order to give people time to program my number into their speed dial, allow me for a moment to do the boogaloo.
Okay.
Okay, now that ought to be enough time. So now, announcement advertisement brought to you by Dr. Hugo J. Mack, Esquire.
Yes.
The King of Russia, Scotland, and Harlem. I love you.
Love you too. What a greeting. Thank you, Attorney Mack.
I love you.
Welcome. So, Attorney Mack.
Yes.
Let's dig in. We were talking earlier, and we were talking about, so today, I'm just going to be honest. This is a little triggering for me because, this is another mother who lost a son. Another thing he had in common was what Gerard was. He also suffered from Crohn's disease. So he was a small guy. They said he's about 150 pounds. So he was a small guy. And then these 5 police officers. So I was listening to Attorney Crump talk about this whole thing, travesty, this morning. And he made some very valid points. He talked about the culture of policing and that the culture, and I think we've been talking about this culture for a minute, Attorney Matt, but the culture of policing is corrupt. This is, every time they get in trouble, they always talk about, oh, they need more training. Oh, we're going to get them more training. It's the training. That's the problem. This training is the problem because it takes the humanity out of them. And if you're not strong enough, you buy into all of this stuff and then you treat people so inhumane that you can't even stop yourself from literally beating someone to death. And it is just so, so shocking that we have to continuously talk about it and talking about it. And I said that I made a post earlier that said that Black people we don't really have to see another video to confirm what we already know. It's the people who continues to deny that needs to see these type of videos. The people who continue to think that it can't happen to them. The people who continue to think that, why don't you comply? Why you got to run? These are the people who need to see. We that already know, we already know. This happens every day. It's in Memphis, but it happens all over the United States. But now that we, once we got these cell phones, at first it was like and I said this before, like an urban legend. You would hear about somebody getting beat or whatever. And, because we didn't have cell phones and there wasn't any video. But now we have cell phones. It hasn't stopped. You thought it would be a deterrent. You know, you got cameras everywhere. People got Ring cameras on their doors. There's cameras in the sky. There's cameras on them. And it's still, that is not a deterrent. So there's something has to be done across the board, not by state. It has to be done across the board where it's a federal mandate. It's the law of the land to get this under wraps, because we cannot continue to live this way. People cannot continue to lose their kids like this.
J-Love, you know, and the panel, earlier today.
And if we don't take action, then we are being compliant. We're laying it down. We're saying yes to it.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. And that's why we have to take action, because it's not okay. It's not okay. And the sad thing is, it's not even a color thing anymore, because sometimes the perpetrator is also an African-American police person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that person's mind has said yes to inhumane treatment.
So I know when I used to work, for Chrysler, right? And they used to give us what they call was a SWI, standing work orders or whatever. And so everyone who operated this job, if you knew those standard work procedures, you would do the same thing, right? There was no error in doing the job because we all did the same thing. And so that's what the training required us, right? And so when you keep talking about training, let's look at the training. You know, we're going to have to get somebody on here to discuss specifically this training. But the training in every case, you know, they do the same thing. You know, they always say, I fear for my life. Or, you know, that's the standard thing that helps them get away with all this stuff, how fearful they are for their lives. But, you know, we see this in, what is that, Grand Rapids, when they shot the kid in the back of the head. And even in Detroit, where they shot the kid 16 times, you know, he was having we fear for our lives. We can't keep normalizing this stuff. Go ahead, Attorney Matt.
You know, earlier today, I was listening to a speech by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And he gave this like back in 1992 at the Omni, which is a huge indoor arena in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was just so amazing to hear the things that he was talking about in terms of ourselves and self-hate, and how we become so enamored with riches, you know, and he spoke about the Black athlete, you know, a few of them, relatively speaking to our population, you know, millionaires and multimillionaires, which is not to diminish their talent. I'm not doing that. But with that, it sets a mindset of, if I play the game a certain way, I can obtain these riches. If I don't rock the boat, I can obtain these riches. If I can get the majority culture to give me a chance, I can obtain these riches. So yes, you know, we applaud Black coaches and all that, but the bottom line is the NFL is owned by white men. I mean, that's the truth. That's where the money is, the ownership of it. The NBA is owned by white men. That's the truth. So what I'm saying is, when I listened to him and I thought about what had happened, what happens with us, how we are so easily seduced into being a part of the system. Because I'm going to tell you, there aren't that many Black millionaires out there that really want to put themselves and their fortunes on the line for social justice. Not really, not really. You may have an outlier like a LeBron James or something like that. But you notice Michael Jordan wasn't saying nothing. He said, I'm an athlete and I ain't worrying about nothing. And that's the truth. That's the truth. So all I'm saying is that for me, it is a situation where we have bought into the lie that our merits determine how far we go. Our merits do not determine how far we go. we have millions of extremely talented young Black men and women that are going nowhere except the penitentiary, except maybe the penitentiary. So when I look at these police officers, you remember the movie Boys in the Hood with Cuba Gooding Jr. and is it Ice Cube?
Cube, yeah.
Ice Cube. Okay, you remember the scene where the police pulled them over? It was a Black officer and it was a white officer. You remember the treatment that Cuba Gooding and them got from that Black officer was so shocking, even the white officer was appalled. Even he was appalled. And I'm saying, don't tell me that's just a movie. It may be a movie, but it is reality in movie form is what it is. Reality in movie form. And so I see that time and time and time again. So the only hope we have, J Love, and two hopes. One, Black men and women taking back control of their family, okay? Back control of their family and raising our young Black men to respect themselves and where they come from, first of all and foremost. The second thing is this. I don't want to hear no more talk about, well, you know, Republicans are evil and all this kind of stuff. The Republicans could be evil, the Democrats could be evil. It's the policy I'm concerned about. I don't care what letter is behind your name. I want to know what kind of policy you're talking about. The reason I support the Democrats, they put forth George Floyd legislation. They put forth John Lewis legislation. That was blocked by Republicans. So that's where I'm coming from. So we got to keep pushing every local and federal election to get people in there and keep people in there. And by the way, I'm going to say this, then I'm going to shut up. We have Democrats control of the governor's office, Democrats control of the state Senate, Democrats in control of the House of Representatives. Now you better damn produce. You better damn produce. I hear they're talking about they're going to do away with right to work. Good. I'm glad they are. But you got prison reform that's got to be addressed. You got this elimination of this, taking away good time disciplinary credits. So I've got a whole list of things that I'm going to be producing to my state rep, and I'll be watching because I'm going to warn all Democrats. If you F me around, mess me around, excuse my language, this time I'm through. I'm through. So don't tell me about how we need a change when we put you in office and you don't do the damn change. And yes, Governor Whitmer, I'm talking to you too. I know it's your last term. You ain't got to run again. So go on and do the right thing. Sorry for taking so long.
Attorney Matt, I listened to her and she didn't say nothing about reform.
That's right.
I didn't hear her say not one word about reforming anything.
That's right.
So Ben Crump said this today. He said policy means nothing when police culture doesn't respect policy or the community. And I was just like, he's right. He's right. It means nothing. Go ahead, Baraka.
I want to share most of the audience that might be regular in terms of turning on here. They know us panelists that are here with the host, J Love. They know who we are. But for those who may not know who I am, I spent all of my adult life in prison. All of my adult life in prison, with the exception of the last 5 years. I came home in 2017. I went to prison in 1975, okay? And I didn't come home until 2017. I went to prison at the age of 17 years old. And I was sentenced to natural life. But before we get into the carceral system in terms of the Department of Correction, I want to share with you what the Wayne County Jail was like. The depths there regularly. This was a daily occurrence, multiple times a day, regularly. It was unusual if it didn't occur, and that was that they would run throughout the county jail and jump on inmates or the occupants of the county jail. This was a regular. And the only heroes that was in the picture was your nurses, African-American women who were there in that space as nurses. Oftentimes they would take and intervene, which put their jobs in jeopardy, because anytime you're in an environment where custody is there, custody always have control over the environment, no matter what you are there for. Even if there's a person on the floor bleeding to death, you don't have the right to do anything other than what custody, those who in custody allow you to do. And these African American women used to take and put their bodies, they used to put their bodies, their voices, every bit of their person in between the merciless person that these depths would take and be jumping on, in the depths themselves. Often it would result or come about as where the county jail inmates would get in a fight with each other on the rock, and the depths would take and they would hit this buzzard that made this horrible sound, and all the depths would take and run to wherever this incident was, and you would see the behavior of the depths. It was mostly young kids. Some was somewhat older, but it was mostly young kids. It was a thrill for them to hear that buzzard go off, and they didn't respond to these buzzards as though they were concerned about somebody's welfare. They was responding to it like it was a carnival, that this was something that they were looking for and that they're ready to get into it. And they would show up. And when they showed up, even though there might have been two people on the floor in between the beds or whatever, because you got this area where it's confined, and the other, if you had an open area and other prisoners may be standing away watching this. And when the depths come in, they clear out of the way to let them come in. They nevertheless will come in and jump on every person that they can see that wasn't in a guard uniform. This was such a regular practice that you will find where some of the prisoners would tell you when they heard that buzzer go off, they tell you, scrap up, man, scrap up. And you be like, scrap up, what's up? Say, look, man, they don't care who in here fighting. They finna come in here and whip us all. They finna, and so the guys went to putting on sheets, tying sheets around their head, or pillowcases, and other things to cushion the blow of blows that they finna get from these guys. And they would immediately, as soon as the guards come within the confines of their lockup, they began to take and fight, because they knew that if they didn't take and render them somewhat weak and beaten, they was going to be rendered weak and beaten. And it was a hell of a culture. And when I got into the prison system, it wasn't unusual to take and find a guy that was being pushed around in a wheelchair. And he got in that wheelchair as a result of what happened back in the county jail when he was a resident in the county jail waiting trial. This was a regular occurrence in 1975 when I was in the county jail waiting trial on a murder case. And I was in the county jail practically a whole year. Okay, I spent practically a whole year. I had actually been in the county jail and was written back down on a homicide case. And so I got to take and witness that culture for about a year as a 17-year-old kid, as a 17-year-old kid. And so you can't tell me about training. Whatever training they had was for the public. It was for some other outside agency. They didn't adhere to anything that you would call a decent culture. And the person that was in charge was an African-American male. He was a former FBI agent. Subsequent, I think he was even a former U.S. He might have been I think at one time he was appointed as assistant attorney general. And this individual, he was a friend of my mentor. I had a mentor that used to come down to the county jail to see me. And these guys went to school together. And he used to come in and inquire to me and ask me, hey, I'm hearing that we talking about William Lucas now. You know, he was the first African-American sheriff that was there in that county at the time. And he would inquire to me. He was like, I hear, you know, that he's really a bad administrator. And I told him everything you hear is correct. You know, there's nothing to take and be proud that you done went to school with this guy or you know this guy. This guy is horrible. He has no authority over these people. And he's just a front. He's just a face. And we see this often. Somebody get hurt, they bring out an African American to take and represent the issue. We see that right now. We have a Supreme Court justice that done took and made this, you know, racist and sexist remarks. And we see that first thing come out is people who look like us that want to take and defend him. That want to tell you, hey, he apologized. He apologized. He apologized. He apologized. You know, let him be. It's okay now. Okay. If we had been accepting apologies, which we have accepted quite a ton of them from the time of being brought across the Atlantic to the present day. Okay. We've been accepting apologies. And I accept this apology. But I also is looking for responsibility. I'm also looking for responsibility. I can forgive him. Okay, you made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You was quite intentional. You went and sought out a news person that you knew is pro-police, and you gave that person a message that was pro-police. But you really was taking and throwing law enforcement under the bus as you were returning citizens and the woman, your co-worker. You created a hostile environment and you literally stabbed her in the back. You literally stabbed her in the back. You never took and campaigned with her vigorously the way people got behind you. And then when she got there, you say, as a senior justice, I'm not even speaking to you. And this is a customary practice that when the younger justice come on, or the newest, the older ones take and groom them towards their duties and their responsibilities. You abandoned her on the campaign trail, and then you continued it in the halls of justice. You should have long took and resigned. You can apologize, but put it in your envelope when you leave the door, and leave the justice robe at the court. Leave the justice robe at the court and submit your resignation and your apology. And those people that want to take and parade around with you and say that you apologize, get with them. Go get with them. And those were the ones that actually took and helped you get in office too. You know, and they don't want to see you go. I can understand that. They put a lot of work in it. But we have put more work in taking and being on an equal playing field as African Americans than they have in your campaign. We done put more work in that, and more blood in that, more sacrifices in that. Okay, so I really don't want to be saying anything at this present time that might incite anything, because we have some horrific things that's going on right now with a gentleman that just lost his life. But these are the things that are the most pressing issues before America's branches of government, whether you're talking about the executive, the judicial, or which one did I leave out? The legislative branch. No matter which of those branches of government you're talking about, these social issues are the most pressing, and we cannot afford a biased partner. You are biased. We as African Americans live in a country. African Americans die more frequently in this country by the hands of law enforcement than Palestinians die in the West Bank or in occupied Palestine by Israeli forces. There are more African Americans die on a daily basis by the hands of law enforcement in the United States than Palestinians are dying in occupied Palestine. And that's a shame. The worst part about it is we don't sense it. We don't realize it. We don't realize it. We live just the way South Africans lived under apartheid. Our movements is restricted. Moving around, doing anything to come out of your home is a threat. Is a threat to come out of your own home. The Fourth Amendment, which would ordinarily protect a person's right, look like Swiss cheese. That constitutional amendment looked like Swiss cheese. There's so many exceptions to the Fourth Amendment. And that's because of the black people that is often used to provide those exceptions. It doesn't look like the Second Amendment, which looked like a military camp. Okay, it looked like a military camp with Confederate flags all around it. And thank you.
I know. Thanks, Edward. You were talking about a few things that touched me. One of the things you were saying about the conditions in the Wayne County when you were in the county is horrific, and when it was COVID, it was horrific, you know. So some of these things haven't changed since 1975. Maybe the beat downs might not happen. It's maybe not happening now, but the conditions are still kind of horrific. And they're saying this is why they're building this new jail, because of what's going on there. And earlier in the winter, you know, they didn't have any heat in the other building, and they were saying, well, there was heat, but this and that was, you know, it was just a lot of excuses. So when we talk about these things and we just normalize them because, you know, we feel we're not connected to it. But actually, we're all connected to it, because there's no criteria or these things that we're talking about that happened to Tyre and all the Tyrees, Amir Locke, and, you know, all these people, all these young black men and women, and even some white ones, a few white people, can happen to anybody at any time. There's no, so, you know, we think because we are,
sorry.
we got a great job, or we got a great our education, you know, that it takes us, we're exempt from these things that's going on. But we're not exempt. We're not exempt. You never know where it can happen, you know, and that's why, you know, for years, you know, my parents had it with me. I had to have it with my kids, you know, the warning about driving, you know, driving out here in these streets, because, you know, you might have a encounter with the police. So you have to tell your kids, you know, you got to drive like this, and you can't have anybody. Like, we had to do this as a black parent. You got to break it all the way down to your kids, because they're, you know, because you know that these things happen inside these cars. These cars, driving is, you can be a target for anything. They don't know who's behind the wheel. You know, they just see your dark skin. And Baraka, there was a study by the Detroit Justice Center about that.
They have a report called highway robbery, where they're talking about, you know, how African Americans are stopped on the highway, and you know, and literally they're ripped off. And when you were talking about the county jail, and that it has one of the justifications were, you know, they needed a new jail because of the conditions, horrific conditions. So they needed a new jail, and because of the number of people. But remind you, they needed a new county jail because they were placing, they created a condition to build a county jail. They artificially inflated the county jail's population by putting people in the county jail that shouldn't have been in there in the first place. The Detroit Justice Center and others, an organization named Vera, and others took and demonstrated this. They documented this. And the legislature done accepted this. They acknowledged that, hey, people were being put in our county jails that was never legislated, that was never accepted, that these are the type of people that you put in the county jail, such as for traffic violations or for motor vehicle violations in terms of you not having certain documents and papers, or you're not having paid child support. Those or having took and committed, whether it was jaywalking or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those are not the type of cases where you take and put somebody in a county jail. You don't take and do that. I got a daughter, I respect people's privacy, but I done seen where, a person is arrested, put in a space, and then the court tell you, oh, you don't have a case. There's no docket here. But the bonds person is saying you have to come down and report to us. And every time you come down, you got to give us a certain amount of money. And if you want to leave the area, you have to get these systems are built to make money, and we have brought into it. Like, we believe that because if a judge give you a bail, somehow everybody is safe. But you can pay to get out. Mm-hmm. So it got nothing to do with your risk assessment. Okay, you can pay to get out. So is you a danger because you paid, or is you a danger because you didn't have to pay? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You still can get out on the bail if you had the money, if the money wasn't an issue. So really, holding a person in custody should be a pure security concern. It shouldn't have anything to do with your affordability. Shouldn't have anything to do with that. My contention is that our county jails, for example, have populations that question the integrity of those county jails and its population. And within those populations is a certain category, and the homeless, the mentally ill, and the substance dependent, and those who are unemployed or chronically unemployed. These populations you will find that make up over 75% of the county jail population. And I mention them again. Mm-hmm. The homeless, mm-hmm. mentally ill, substance dependent, and unemployed or chronically unemployed. These are the individuals that you will find in a county jail. Neither of these categories represent social threats. Mm-hmm. They represent social issues that can be taken care of by social services. Mm-hmm. Homelessness can be taken care of by social service.
Right.
Substance use can be addressed by social services. Okay. Mentally ill can be addressed by social services. Unemployment can be addressed by social services. They cannot be addressed by law enforcement. To do so, it costs more. This is why we see this inflated number where law enforcement agencies receive 60% of a state's budget, and all these services that I just mentioned get like 12%, 8%, or 9%. The reason they only get those percentages is because our politicians, in having frightened everybody in running for office, in having frightened everybody, they have took and give people who are not doing their job, they have given them other people's jobs. Okay? Police is not designed to show up at a fire. Those are jobs for people at the firehouse.
Right.
Give a SWAT car a call to a burning house. Okay, that's not the purpose. That's not the call of law enforcement. At one time, law enforcement showed the integrity and decency to say no, but they later took and bit into it. When Reagan first took and said that, hey, we want you guys to take and do this thing on drugs, they were like, no, that's social work. But when Reagan took and said that, hey, we'll give you all this military hardware, we'll give you these military vehicles, we'll give you the squad outfits and training and all of these weapons, they jumped on it.
Mm-hmm.
They jumped on it like kids getting presents on Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh hell no, we got 10 speeds, we got mini bikes, we got hammers. I mean, they were like, yes. And now you can't get them to take their hands off it. Anytime somebody begin to do anything to threaten those turfs that they now got, they will push back with big propaganda. They claim that the reason that crime has spiked it in the last 3 years is because of the movement to abolish cash bail. Okay? They don't say nothing about the number of people who died in those facilities during the pandemic. They don't even talk about their fellow co-workers that died under those circumstances. And that's a shame that you don't even talk about the safety of people who are working with you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You just do a propaganda, and you don't say anything about the men and women that stood shoulder to shoulder with you. That's a shame.
Yes. And you know, as you said, I think about, you know, the governor when she did her State of the State. You're right. She didn't mention anything about COVID and how these people that died inside these prisons. She said she's gonna spend more money to get the police more training. That's what she said. Mm-hmm. And so, but she ran on reforms and change and all this stuff, but she wants to give them more money for training. So her platform has changed to be a part of the narrative, to, you know, to enforce the fear, as we're talking about. If they're talking about kids carjacking every day, then that's all you're going to think about is kids carjacking every day. But when you go down to that courthouse, they're talking about more than carjacking. There's all kinds of stuff going on that you don't even have a clue about, because they program you to believe about how these kids are carjacking or whatever the case is every day. When I was down there with my son, I was unbelievable. I couldn't believe all the stuff that was going on in this city, you know, just by sitting in the courtroom listening to all these cases. But they don't show that. They don't show. And I've seen tons, and I'm just going to say it, tons of white people down there at 36th District Court. Had a whole lot of, you know, robberies and stuff going on, things that they were doing. But you don't see this on TV. You know, you'll be stunned about all the things that's going on that you don't see on TV. But what makes money is your brown skin, you know, because we want to see it at 2. We want to see it at 4. We want to see it at 7, you know, and keep programming ourselves. And then we're going to watch, after the news go off, then we're going to go watch CSI, and we're going to go watch, you know, and all these other cop shows and get more programming. And then you normalize all this bad behavior when something happens where you shouldn't have been running, where you shouldn't have been out there. You know, they carjack. You fall into all these narratives and start believing this stuff. And then you wonder why nobody is saying anything, because you've been programmed not to. So there was a question. I want to go back to it. Prison Nation said, I know someone serving life without parole for beating a person to death. He was charged with first-degree murder. My question to the panel and community is, why are we okay with these 5 officers only being charged with second-degree murder? I don't think we're okay with it. And I think they're out on bail. And
hey, we didn't charge them. As far as I'm concerned, that's first-degree premeditated murder. Exactly. And because of the training you said you had,
Exactly.
First of all, because of the training you said you had,
Right. You're supposed
you
to be.
knew better. Okay, you knew
Aren't they
better.
supposed to be trained in de-escalation?
Yes, you had training that took and taught you how to de-escalate a situation. You know that responsibility in a law enforcement agency is spread it out. It doesn't just start at the top. Every individual that put on that suit, every individual that put on that suit is considered to be a sworn officer, and they are expected and they are taught to uphold the laws, and not only our laws, but even our sense of morals. You know,
Yes.
what is right, what is we expect that, and that's supposed to be part of the culture of these law enforcement agencies. You know, we have to change the culture. We have to quit saying that these is only a few bad apples. And this police captain that then came out and trying to be transparent and trying to be very blunt and forthcoming, she need to go ahead and say the culture. She need to say the culture. The culture have to be changed. The culture have to be changed.
And she needs to take responsibility that what's happening in her police force, because at the end of the day, she's the one in charge. She's the one in charge. And you can say it's these guys, and we don't, this is not what we want them to do when they're out there. You can put all that good front on. But at the end of the day, these are your people. And the buck's supposed to stop with you.
In regards of culture, and and I want to say something to young Caucasian students and others on college campus and university that have been suckered into taking and bringing lawsuits, arguing that somehow they were discriminated against as a white person and not able. Those are sucker plays. You have your people who are resistant to change, and they take advantage of people, and they'll go to you with some sense of loss or hurt, and they'll tell you, "Hey, we'll represent you. We'll take care of all your legal fees. You take and do this." And I want to point out to you what you lose. You lose sensitivity of diversity. You lose the diversity, and this is what gets you into situations just like what we viewing right now. Even though in this case it's African Americans, but quite often it's you.
Mm-hmm.
It's you. It's your color, your skin that looks like this. But you grin you in, and those brothers and sisters that done went and got in these institutions, and all they did was grin since they got there. They're happy to be there. They in. They part of that culture too. So I remind them, while I was in prison, I used to attend classes at Spring Arbor Community College, which is a university now.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the faculty approached me. They knew I was Muslim, and they know that the Muslim prisoners were taken and refusing to be frisked by women guards. They knew that the guys would go to the hole, and the prison got to where they wouldn't just put you in the hole for 7 days for disobeying a direct order. They started taking it, saying this is a security threat, and they took it at a minimum. They put you in the hole for 6 months, okay? Because the Muslims were, they would know, they would be very respectful, and they would say, "No, you cannot frisk me. I'm a man. You're a woman. You shouldn't have your hands on me, and I shouldn't have my hands on you. One of your male co-workers should be shaking me down." So this particular Christian college, which I'm very thankful for having given me the opportunity to get a degree. That's why I got my undergraduate degree. Okay, I got a degree in behavioral science from that. That allowed me, after I came home, to take and get my master's degree from the University of Michigan. But I'm still taking acknowledging what was there. Some of their personnel, some of the teachers came to me and said, "Hey, look, we will pay for your attorney fees. We will get you an attorney. Do you want to file a lawsuit? File a lawsuit to get the women out of the MDOC." I said no. No, because even though I may have had some objections to some of the things that was going on, overall, their presence in the MDOC was greater than their harm. The benefit of their presence there were greater than their harm. As I mentioned to you, the people that were putting themselves in between the prisoners in the county jail, those were women. Those were women. Okay, you had very few African American males were even being hired in 1975 in the Wayne County Jail. Okay, I remember one African American male nurse. All other nurses were female. Okay, and this reality was reflected even in the prison system. These sisters came in. They helped change the culture. First of all, brothers began, the men in the prison, they didn't care about their appearance. Okay, they didn't care about bathing. The prison used to have a room where you had to take a shower once a day. And the guards used to literally come around to your cell and say shower, and they kept records of who got in the water and who didn't. You can literally be given a ticket for not taking care of your hygiene, not getting in the shower. They didn't stop that practice until after the women came in the system, because once the women's got there, the guys had no problems getting in the shower. They wanted to smell better. Okay? They wanted to smell better. These guys used to take and keep their hair. I mean, just not, I'm talking about not the beautiful corn braids and all of this. They used to carry it on, you know, the way they had no regards of their appearance. They would put mascara on, you know, stuff on their face to deal with acne or whatever. They would walk around in shower shoes, and they just didn't care. They wouldn't get dressed until they were told that you got a visit. And it would take them 2 or 3 hours to get ready to go out on the visit. They were so, you know, unprepared in maintaining their hygiene and so forth. It took 2-3 hours just to get ready to get out on the visit. The women changed that. They changed the culture. The guys were concerned about how they carried themselves. There was an open environment of expression of homosexuality. When the women came, guys, hey, they changed. You know, they changed. They wasn't doing that. You didn't see two men standing around taking a French kiss or humping on each other all in the open and carrying on and disgusting everybody. That changed. When the women came, they were like, hey, I'm a guy. So, but they brought about some good change. The guys began to take and show regards to the women. They became sensitive to them being in their environment. They became more cultured in terms of how they presented themselves, how they acted, etc. And that was even true with African American males. When you just had a few of them in the environment, they was as worse as the Caucasians they worked with. But as they began to take and raise the numbers and begin to interact with the guys, hey, we looked at them as our family, and they looked at us as our family, and they began to take and play a real constructive role in terms of rehabilitation of the people that they came in contact with.
Right. So
it's a lot.
Biwana, Richard said, this is so touching and sad. No conditions have not changed at all. We all see for facts no change since Rodney King, Malice Green, George Floyd, and all the others brutalized by police. Yes, it is a must that our children be warned and aware. So, Attorney Hugo Matt, I saw Prison Nation had brought this up, and I saw this over the weekend. Actually, I watched it. It was a protest in Atlanta this past weekend because they're taking land that was I think it was, you know,
right.
They're taking this like 85 acres,
right,
big Cop City. And it's supposed to be some kind of training and facility or whatever. And I'm thinking 85 acres
Yeah, yeah,
of training for
right,
training. What kind of
right,
training are they doing out here on 85 acres?
right. You know, I'm so glad you raised that issue. You know, I've been following that and researching that. You know, do you remember when the equivalent of the Proud Boys took over some government facilities and the federal government used kit gloves with them? I don't know if this was in Montana or Utah. The state escapes me. If one of y'all remember, you can film. But anyway, they took over with guns. I'm talking about guns. Took over and was talking about, this is our land, or you wrongfully on somebody's land trespassing. The government used kit gloves with them. Kit gloves, all right? And then people occupied that place. It seems like at least a couple months that they were there, and negotiations, and, you know, we don't want to start any kind of trouble here. These are American citizens, you know, and we're concerned about, you know, like, you know, some hybrid of posse comitatus where the government is being turned on its own citizenship. Do y'all remember that? Okay, I remember it quite well. And what I'm saying is that has happened time and time and time again. Most recently, January the 6th of 2021, if my memory serves me right. The United States Capitol has never been breached by the Confederates. It has never been breached that way by the British. It has never been breached that way by the French. It took American citizens to breach our nation's capital. The British never got to the Speaker's House of Representatives. The French never got to the Speaker's House of Representatives. The indigenous people damn sure never got to the Speaker of the House of Representatives office. These other people did. And yet what happened? They were treated with kit gloves. Kit gloves. Okay? National Guard not called in till later. President of the United States, arguably, or I should say former president of the United States. Well, technically still president in that sense. You know what I'm trying to say. Who could have done something, was giving cover to these people, giving them excuses as great Americans. So I can give you example. I can tell you about David Koresh. You remember David Koresh? David Koresh? You see how the Clinton administration, they did all kinds of kit glove approaches to try to induce that man to leave, and only resorted to violence as the last extreme. There was another case where some FBI agents were trying to capture some white separatist, and then the FBI agents and ATF agents were ended up looking and saying, well, these are stormtroopers. These are black booted stormtroopers. You know, I say stormtroopers, you know what they're talking about, right? You do know, you know they're talking about Adolf Hitler, right? You do know that. All right. And the vile racism that he exhibited. They're referred to members of our own law enforcement community as that. Say, well, okay, Hugo Mack, what are you saying? I'm saying with this situation, they were dealing with a group of indigenous-minded people who did not feel it was proper to invade that land to that extent to build Cop City. And you doggone right, J Love. This, and by the way, you notice how close it is to Atlanta.
Yeah, I see right here, Prison Nation put on here 85 acres of land from the predominantly black neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Which includes a protected watershed area.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that there was no kit glove treatment with these folks. I mean, they weren't burning down the forest. They weren't putting chemicals in the ground. They weren't radiating the leaves. They were simply occupying an area. I didn't see any real evidence of gunplay from the indigenous people there. Maybe there was. I mean, maybe somebody did shoot. But because a shot is fired does not give police the authority to open up with semi-automatic and automatic weapons on a group of people. It doesn't give them that authority to do that. So when I look at this whole thing with Cop City and how they're like covering this up, like these are like environmental terrorists. I still don't know what that means. Environmental terrorists. If
what is environmental terrorists? People who standing up for the protected lands?
For protected lands, yes. So if I'm objecting to a nuclear power reactor being built on somebody's indigenous historical grave site or burial site, then I'm an environmental terrorist.
Hey, Mac, add in there MOVE. Talk about MOVE.
Yeah.
Remember the organization MOVE?
Oh, yeah.
Add that in there.
That whole neighborhood.
Yeah. You know, so, no. Once again, it's that terrible double standard. But you know what? As bad as this is, I hope it sends a message to other indigenous peoples, and I hope it sends a message to our Caucasian brothers and sisters too, because I'm telling you, it is getting to the point. It is not just about Black people. It is about now a class of people, a class of people. And I'm telling you, if some of our white brothers and sisters was in the wrong place at the wrong time, the color of their skin would have made no difference. No difference.
Yeah.
You know? And you know what? I want to bring attention to the cost. $90 million.
Well, yeah.
For 85 acres.
Yeah.
Of policing. And then we need to recognize that they're policing Americans. There's more policing done to the citizens of the United States than it is, and worse treatment. We have no protection compared to war prisoners. War prisoners are more protected than you and I as American citizens.
Yeah.
That's right.
So who are the terrorists?
That's right. That's how they
have a picture of the terrorists. Who are the real terrorists? And what does that person actually look like?
Right. And Reverend Tia, I don't mean to interrupt, but let me say this. You are 10,000% right, my sister. Do you know during World War II, when they had German soldiers that were imprisoned and some brought to the United States for interrogation purposes, do you know they got better treatment than the Black GIs? Than the Black GIs did? Given full rights. If you were a colonel in Hitler's army, Nazi, swastika wearing, you were given rights and privileges and respect as a colonel right here. You know, they have that mockery of a show, Hogan's Heroes, that comes on and it's kind of funny to some people, but really what that shows is the alleged supremacy of the white American GI and intelligentsia over the Germans. You see what I'm saying? Over the Germans. You notice you never saw any Black person. I think there's one guy, Ivan Dixon, that was normally in the cast. You never saw any Black person in any kind of a leadership or intellectual role in that program. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, being 68 years of age, going back and looking at the TV shows that I looked at, I realized the words of Reverend Tia are so prescient because we have been programmed into thinking that others have a supreme role. We look to others, for example, of intelligentsia and gut and fortitude and spirit. You see, other than ourselves. So I'm sorry, Reverend Tia, but I just had to say that because even people that slaughtered Black, by the way, Black GIs in Germany, they were hated by the German soldiers. Hated. I saw a documentary where at least 150 Black soldiers were singled out and massacred over in Europe by the Germans because of the color of their skin and how much Hitler hated black folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna play. I got a video, you guys, and we need to play it. Attorney Mack, and it deals with what you want to talk about. So let me do this right quick. Just 1 second, everyone.
In the 1960s, the air of resistance and turbulence helped create hip-hop. Hip-hop became our voice that was for so long silenced.
When we look at global context, people across cultures can listen and say, that's my story too.
Commercial.
Los Angeles police have released video of the arrest of Keenan Anderson, the cousin of a Black Lives Matter co-founder. He was detained earlier this month and tased after he was involved in a car accident. As he was being arrested, he expressed fears that he would meet the same fate as George Floyd, whose killing by police sparked nationwide protests. Anderson died in police custody several hours later. The incident is still being investigated, but it's a stark reminder of the hundreds of people who die at the hands of police each year, and the wide racial disparities that persist among those deaths. John Yang has this report on one mother's experience and where policing in America goes from here.
22-year-old Amir Locke was an aspiring musician, and to his mother, Karen Wells, a loving son.
He had a really good sense of humor. His smile, it was infectious. He loved to give hugs, so that makes me smile.
It was 11 months ago that a police officer shot and killed Locke in a downtown Minneapolis apartment. For Wells, it's been 11 months of devastation.
Mentally, in order for me to get through the day, I basically just tell myself, Amir's on vacation.
Each time Wells returns to Minnesota or learns about another death at the hands of Twin Cities police, the pain of her son's killing comes rushing back.
My heart don't beat the same anymore. It does not beat the same. It's broken. And it'll never, the best surgeon in America could never repair my heart after what they did to my son.
On the morning of February 2nd, Minneapolis police executed a no-knock search warrant on an apartment in connection with a homicide investigation. Locke wasn't named in the warrant and didn't live at the apartment. When officers stormed through the door, he appeared to be asleep on a couch. Locke stirred from under a blanket. He was holding a handgun, which family said he was licensed to carry. An officer fired 3 shots. The killing touched off days of protest in Minneapolis, still reeling from the death of George Floyd less than 2 years earlier. Adding to the public outrage, initial police accounts wrongly named Locke as a suspect. In the weeks that followed, the city of Minneapolis banned no-knock warrants, but prosecutors did not charge the officer who fired the fatal shots, concluding that he felt threatened.
Amir Locke was holding it by the butt of the gun in a shooting position, although his finger was not on the trigger. That gun was pointed directly at Officer Hanman.
Karen Wells says her son was simply protecting himself. She no longer trusts police and sees little progress on the reforms that were promised after Floyd's killing.
The saying is you have to crawl before you walk. They're not even at the stage of crawling right now when it comes to police reform. I believe that we'll get to the running stage when more police officers are held accountable for their mistakes, their lethal mistakes.
According to a Washington Post database, in 2022, police in the United States shot and killed about 1,100 people, the most since the paper began tracking fatal police shootings in 2015 after the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. But the Post found that while the number of fatal police shootings is increasing, fewer are being reported to the federal government.
There's a saying that you track what you care about.
Andrew Bautran is a data reporter for the Post's investigative team.
This just shows, as researchers have said, that the overall attempt to track police-involved shootings has failed. There are too many loopholes for police departments to not report their police-involved shootings. If they don't want to, they're not going to.
For Karen Wells, the focus remains justice for her son.
We're going to keep saying Amir Locke, justice for Amir Locke. I won't be quiet until I get justice for my son. I will never stop speaking up for him. Never.
It's been more than 2.5 years since the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which led to calls for sweeping police reform and more accountability. What's been accomplished in that time? Thaddeus Johnson is a criminology professor at Georgia State University in Atlanta and a former Memphis police officer. Thaddeus Johnson, what has been accomplished in that time?
I think we're trending in the right direction, but we've only created a baseline for the reforms necessary to create a police force that's trustworthy and effective. I think that there's a lot of politicization. There are some obstacles, but also there's a lack of data and evidence to really know where to pinpoint reform or to do it in a very efficient way. And so the first thing we need is a database. We need more data on traffic stops, arrests, police use of force, both lethal and non-lethal. The federal government, with President Biden's executive order, he created a blueprint, but we still have a long way to go. We understand the limits of policing. We understand that it's not just the officers on the streets, that it's actually leadership, it's state laws, it's lawmakers, but we're kind of sorting these things out. And I think that's a natural progression.
You see, it's created a baseline. We just heard in the tape the mother of Amir Locke talk very movingly about what she's gone through and how it's affected her attitude toward police and police officers, and how she's fighting for justice for her son. What's your message to her and to so many other mothers and fathers like her who've lost children to police violence?
Well, I would let her know that she's not fighting alone, even though it may feel like it. Even if we don't see state laws being passed or these big, obvious, high magnitude changes that we may want to see, we have to understand that reform is a piecemeal approach. But you have many nonprofits, you have many prosecutors, you have many police leaders, many judges, many lawmakers who understand that we need to move forward. I mean, look, in the past couple of years, we've seen police officers held accountable criminally. That's something that we've never seen in my lifetime. And I tell everyone this. We may not see the Department of Police force that we want to see in our generation. But if we continue the path that we're going, generations to come, our grandkids, they will reap the benefits of what's being done now.
We also heard in the tape about the Washington Post report looking into the disparity, the number of police shootings going up, but the number of police shootings reported to the federal government going down. What's the concern about what that creates and causes?
Well, it's very concerning. Our tax dollars pay for this service. And that's the public's data. That's our data. And we shouldn't have to beg for it. It's hard to improve things when we don't even have a baseline of knowledge. And with the limited data that we have, we're almost, I don't want to say flying in the dark when it comes to creating interventions, but we don't have the data that we need to be comfortable oftentimes to make these determinations and these changes.
You taught use of force when you were an officer in Memphis. Does that training have to change in order for the policies to match the practices?
The one thing that we taught officers were to take control of the scene. And taking control of that scene, we're teaching officers to be aggressive. We're teaching officers to exert their physical and legal authority on the scene, as opposed to dealing with our citizens like human beings, in which they are, as if they're co-producers for solutions of crime, or people who are actually going through some type of struggle. We have to also train our officers to de-escalate, not just verbally, but also put space between officers and the people that they encounter, particularly when you can tell and look at the cues that things are escalating. And one reason that you see officers tend to be overly assertive when it comes to these aspects is the emphasis of arrests, traffic stops, and custodial stops in the evaluation process. I mean, it's difficult to be promoted It's difficult to get a more prestigious assignment or get a better shift in a better neighborhood if you don't have high numbers in these areas. But many of these things don't have public safety value. And what they do, they tend to unnecessarily put police and citizens in adversarial situations that could have otherwise been prevented when we also reward officers for these traditional, antiquated crime fighting metrics only. We also prevent the pipeline for more diverse leaders, whether it's younger leaders, whether it's women leaders, or whether it's non-white leaders, who research has shown has been attracted to this type of policing as opposed to the warrior style policing that we've seen far too long.
Thaddeus Johnson from Georgia State University. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
So that was a lot. I thought this was the video, but there was another one that goes into what happened in California, and that's what I was trying to lead into also. That was just a couple of weeks ago, as well as when they tased the young man, to literally tase him to death. So, you know, I listened to him and I'm like, okay, he was a trainer in Memphis. And we're talking about Memphis today. They must have learned too much, because the Scorpion crew was out here harassing and beating people. When I was listening to them this morning, they were talking about how those 5 police officers, that whole little crew of them, that's what they did. They was out in the streets. They were beating people. They were pretty much like what the Big Four used to be to Detroit back in the day. That's what they were doing. And it didn't even matter age. They were beating elderly people, and people were reporting it. But they they wasn't taking the reports or whatever. Just like, again, we had an officer here with 100 complaints, and how they still get promoted, and because of what he was talking about, they get promotion based on the things of how many people they arrest and all these other things, like they get incentives for all this stuff. And so we are the ones who are in danger. Somebody ready to move up in the ranks, the whole neighborhood is in trouble, because they're going to be doing whatever they can do, to move wherever they need to go. And so this is why we need to have these conversations, because we don't know what's going on until it happens to us.
And we need to take action. We need to take action, because at some point we need to say it's enough. And I'm tired of waiting for the next generation. We've been waiting 400 years now. How many generations we got to go to make a difference? At some point, we have to realize the psychosis that is within the culture of policing and what that is based upon. And we can't just focus on that, but we need to see what are the answers and solutions, and how does that begin with us? For every other industry, you have to take a test to demonstrate whether you have biases. You have to be culturally competent. When you are a psychologist, you have to be culturally competent. When you are a social worker, you have to be culturally competent. And that means that whoever comes in your presence, that is the person that you are going to help. That is not the case with the police department. They are not culturally competent. And there is a madness in the mind for many police because of the culture. And that same madness, they've done the studies, and it is equal to that of somebody who is experiencing a psychotic breakdown. And yet we have accepted it as law. So what are we going to do? Yes, they need a psychological exam. Yes. Why is that not a mandate? I don't know. Why don't they want to make a change? Go ahead, Attorney Matt.
No, I'm sorry for interrupting last time because I'm taking notes when you talk. So, you know, and part of it is I really feel even with the psychological test, who's writing the test?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Something that's very important is I'm sure all you know the determination of IQ. You know,
Yeah.
and saying you have to have a certain IQ or an aptitude level. I encountered that with the preparing for the LSAT. Okay, you know, and even the bar exam itself. Okay, I mean, I'm telling you, to get to the point of taking a bar exam or any other kind of exam to get licensed, in my experience, you've had to become so culturally in tune with what I want to say. I'll say the majority culture. I won't say the predominant culture, the superior culture, but I'll say the majority culture. You've got to become so in tune with a series of laws. It's hard to keep your independence once you've had to study and work so hard to prove your acceptance in that system. And that is exactly what is happening with the police, particularly these black officers. And let me say this. You know, black people are the most obliging, forgiving, kumbaya, short-minded, short memory, short-willed people in the history of this country. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Because we want to be accepted so much, we will put clothespins on our noses to make them narrower. We will purse our lips inside out to make them narrower. We will put lie. Remember Denzel and Malcolm X? We will put lie on our hair to make it straight. Mm-hmm. We will put bleach on our skin to make it lighter. We will talk like other people talk in order to try to be acceptable by them. No other group except perhaps the indigenous. I no longer say, you know, I like to say, you know, American Indians. I want to say the original Americans, the original Americans, except for perhaps them, who, by the way, chose death over slavery, I might add, because, you know, they tried to enslave them people too. Them people say, we'll die on this battlefield or as soldiers and warriors, but, you know, black people have a little bit different experience in this country. So what I'm saying is that part of the problem that I see is that we are perpetually letting a mojo being run on us, on letting other people not only define us, but judge us. And that is the problem with the black policemen right now. That is the problem with far too many black attorneys right now. We have bought into a system that has never been designed to judge us fairly, but we support it anyway. Now you say, well, what you talking about? You're part of it. Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true. But I'm a part of it that is least willing to acknowledge my shortcomings and willing to try to do something to change for other people coming behind me, you know, to ask them to have some friggin' backbone and don't worry about General Motors. Don't worry about Chrysler. Don't worry about, you know, IBM. Well, I got to make some good money. Well, you never make as much money as a white man. I mean, I'm just being honest. So redefine success. Don't define success. I got to live in Bloomfield Hills. You know, I got to have me this big fancy car. You know, I got to have in this prestigious law firm. I define success by the people that my heart goes out to, that I know I can and have helped. Okay. And so for any future lawyers, you know, Barack already knows this. And Barack, come on, man, we need you now. Come on now. He already knows this. Define success by what God-given talent has been given you to help another human being progress to be the greatest you are. And all future lawyers out there, I'm telling you this right now. If you build your practice on taking people to a better place, you will be rewarded beyond this earth, because God knows he's looking, He's watching and he is judging.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I see. One of the comments said that we need a nationwide boycott. I know I was listening to them in Memphis this week. I've been listening to different people that are organizing down there, and they're doing this weekend. I mean, outside of protesting, they're doing don't buy anything this weekend. Don't buy nothing. So just like those semi trucks drivers that organized a successful boycott that shut down the whole entire state, that eliminated that young man from having 100 years to 10 years. We had to take a page out of their playbook. You know, we got to do something different. So on that,
we got to get back to the basics, Jay. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Get back to the basics.
Yeah,
back to what's important.
Right.
Take our children back.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
take back, understand and realize the power that you have with your families.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what you're eating. Look at what you're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Take your life back when it comes to health and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And look at what you can do. I had an aunt who was always, I would see something I wanted in a magazine. I didn't go to the store to buy it. I took that picture over to my Aunt Gwen, and Aunt Gwen laid it out.
Mm-hmm.
And she had the dress I wanted, and she spent $5.
Right.
There's some things that we can do. The question is, will we do it? Are you willing to do it?
Right.
And what's going to move you? When I went to the store and realized that they had gone up on ginger and turmeric when nobody was even buying it. I've been buying turmeric and ginger for years. And all of a sudden, now that the health industry is talking about it more, then they go up on the price. So what you going to do?
Grow it.
I went in the kitchen and planted my ginger and planted my turmeric.
Right.
Because I'm not going to pay $6 for a little itty bitty thing of turmeric when I can go and do 2-3 months worth and not have to spend anything at all.
Right.
You know, and those of us who went and paid $4.79 for a dozen eggs, what you going to do?
Right.
You're going to keep paying $4.79.
$6, $9. You can get you some chickens. Attorney Mack had chickens all in his neighborhood last summer.
You know what? I'm about to listen. I hurried up and identified 2 farms right near me. They will see me because I will pay them $4 for some good eggs. And I've decided I called after that $4.79 because I usually get 2 dozen of eggs. Only got 1 dozen. I put out a clarion call to the Little Johns. We having a meeting. Because what I'm not going to do is buy another dozen of eggs. And that land we got out there, we about to do some stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's going to take us coming together and in our own productive, genius minds, putting together action plans. And share your action plan in the community.
SOS.
Yeah.
SOS, study, organize, strategize. That's what we need. That's it. That's it. Okay, so we only got a few minutes left. Go ahead, Baraka.
We do need to take and embark upon some action. We need to take and give abolition a chance within our community. We mostly talk about reform, and actually reform in this country consists of remedial changes. Actually, I was meeting with a group where a gentleman, and he's in law enforcement. He happened to be at the group, and that's exactly what he suggested that we do. Now that all the Democrats are in all the offices, he said, let's just some, small changes. We can't move too fast. We got to think about our kids. I didn't know where that came from, other than the person being in that space to take and kill whatever momentum that exists there. We should be thinking about not reform per se. There are some things that's relevant to reform, but most of the things that are harming us need to be abolished. The cash bail system needs to be abolished. Nothing about the reform in the cash bail system.
Yep.
It's part of slavery. We need to abolish it. The idea of taking and giving law enforcement immunity, just blanket immunity, that needs to be abolished. That needs to be abolished. Okay. The idea of just taking and just saying because a person had been in contact with law enforcement that person is denied the right to employment in areas that have no relevance to what the person may have even done. Me and Hugo Mack can be attorneys, but neither of us can take and be a notary public. We cannot notarize documents because they say you can't if you've been convicted for a crime in the past. Okay? He can be attorney, but he can't be a private investigator. He can't even be the manager of a private investigator firm. Okay? If another person owned it, the private investigative firm, and they hired him, he couldn't be the manager, but he can be attorney. These laws that are being created has no design other than to harm. It's like whatever we can find and just throw at them, whenever we can throw at them. It's just hatred, just bitterness. And we heard that on our state highest court. We heard that on our state highest court. We have to start thinking about some abolition. We have to say that, hey, we abolishing the idea of locking up homeless people. We abolish the idea of locking up people for substance use. We're going to abolish that idea. We're going to abolish the idea of taking and locking someone up because they don't make enough money to take and pay child support. We're not going to then take and turn around and pay for him or her. We're going to pay his or her room and board because he ain't got the money. So we're going to sweat him with the county jail. We got to abolish that idea.
Yeah.
Or that we're going to lock people up for private industries. You didn't pay a bill, and so we go arrest you and put you in the county jail because you didn't have insurance. You don't have insurance, you don't drive the car, but you don't put the person in jail. You don't put the person in jail. You had an accident. I mean, if you wasn't using the car in some kind of criminal activity, which may consist of driving drunk, but you don't take and just people up for these what we would call civil violations.
Right.
We have to abolish things like that. So we have, if we're going to get serious about reform, first start with some of the abolition. Because once you get in there, then you get serious about what really needs to be reformed. If you look at the Michigan Parole Board and look at the last 4 or 5 governors in the state of Michigan, each one of them came in office and almost immediately they did something with the parole board because they'd have made that a political issue with the public. But if you look at what they did, it's all been remedial.
Right.
One governor takes and put additional number of people on the board, and that's reform.
Right.
Another governor comes back in and changes that number. That's reform.
Right.
Okay. None of that bull is reform.
Right.
It wasn't an issue in the first place. It was all about politics. And so they continue to take and feed the public with BS. They had a system where they used to take and reward good behavior, where they encourage good behavior. They took the whole system away, and now we have growing inside of our prisons gangs. Do you know what used to be the biggest cop on a prison yard? The biggest cop was Good Time. If you knew when you came through RGNC, they gave you a slip and that slip took and told you, this is the time that you got. And this is the time that we would reduce if you behave. Guys put that in their mind and they went into the system, was like, I'm finna get this time that they finna cut my time with. And that became the biggest cop on the yard. Even when the police wasn't around, the guys knew how to take and behave because they knew that if they didn't, and the guards knew that, they feel the sense of security. This guy got some brakes on him, you know, because he know that if he assault me, if he do certain things here in the prison environment, he know what he's losing, even independent of what I may or may not do. Okay? And they took that away. And so now what we have in our prison system, we have gangs that are festering inside of the MDOC that would eventually turn back to our communities. And then we have this cycle again of running behind gangs. We have gangs now here in the state of Michigan that was born in LA or New York or Chicago. We traditionally had gangs here in the state of Michigan where people age out. They age out. They become a certain age. They no longer down with that. It's not an issue. Okay? But we talking about gangs out of areas where these people take and remain in the gang in their senior years. They are still members of those gangs. And we now have that taken shape in the state of Michigan, primarily because we took what was a protection in the environment, what was a barrier in the environment in terms of good time and special good time, that's now been taken away. And now each other are looking for different type of protection, different type of, you know, pumping up. And it's ludicrous. We need to start thinking about some abolition. And some of that abolition will make us think serious about reform when we do go to reform. We need to start with the abolition. It makes no sense that you would put a person in uniform that can't even testify in a courtroom. He or she cannot even show up in a courtroom, okay? Even under the Sharia say that if you lie on a person, you no longer have the right to take and testify against anybody other than yourself.
Right. I need to cut us short. I'm sorry, Baraka.
Good. But thank you.
Yes. So yes, we'll be back next week, you guys. We have Attorney Elizabeth Franklin Best will be here next Friday. So please be here with your questions and ready to join us on turning a moment into a movement. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.